Let me start with something that happened before the first ball was struck, because that's where this story really begins. A few weeks before Rome, Alex Eala was lying on a hotel bed in some European city that had already started to blur into the next one. She was scrolling through her phone and she saw yet another comment. Something about clay being her graveyard. Something about how she moved like a hard-court player trying to ice skate. Something about how she'd never crack the top 30. She put the phone down, stared at the ceiling, and for a long moment she let herself feel the weight of every doubt she had been carrying since she turned pro. Then she got up, laced her shoes, and went to practice in the rain. She didn't know it yet, but that rain would follow her to Rome, and so would everything else. The Italian Open did not announce itself gently. It arrived like a fever. The Foro Italico, with its marble statues and its sun-baked clay that turns ochre under May skis, had already swallowed dreams whole before the second week even began. But Alex Eala walked into that arena on the first day of her campaign as a ghost. Not literally, of course, she was very much alive. But she was the kind of player that the tennis industrial complex had already filed under promising but not yet dangerous. She was world number 38. She was 20 years old. She was from the Philippines, a country that had never produced a WTA 1000 semifinalist, let alone a champion. And she was playing on clay, the surface that supposedly exposed every flaw in her movement, every hesitation in her footwork, every doubt that lived in the space between her forehand and her backhand. The first round was a baptism. Magdalena Frech, a Polish grinder who had never heard of the concept of giving away free points, dragged Eala into a three-set war that stretched across 2 rain delays. The Roman sky opened up twice as if the gods themselves were trying to wash the match away. But Eala stayed. She stayed through the slippery clay, through the slippery scoreline, through the moment at 4-4 in the third set when her legs started to ask her questions she didn't have answers for. She won. Not beautifully, not easily. She won the way you survive an accident, by staying conscious until the ambulance arrives. The second round was revenge. Wang Xinyu, the 31st seed, had beaten Eala in Auckland earlier that year. It had been one of those losses that leaves a splinter under your skin. Not a blowout, not a humiliation, just a slow, grinding defeat where you keep telling yourself you'll turn it around and then suddenly you're walking to the net with your racket bag feeling twice as heavy. In Rome, Eala turned it around. She beat Wang in straight sets that were anything but straight. Every game was a negotiation. Every point was a small argument, but she won, and for the first time all week she allowed herself to think, maybe. Then came Aryna Rybakina, the world number 2, a woman made of ice and laser beams. This was the match that was supposed to end the fairy tale. Rybakina plays tennis like a sniper, minimal movement, maximum damage. She doesn't scream, she doesn't pump her fist, she just hits the ball and watches you fail to return it. Their match went to 3 sets, it went to a third set tiebreak. It went to a moment where Eala found herself at 5-5, facing a break point with the entire Foro Italico holding its breath. She saved it with a backhand down the line that missed the sideline by less than the width of a tennis ball's felt. Then she lost the next 2 points anyway. Rybakina won, but something strange happened on the walk to the net. Rybakina looked at Eala the way you look at a door you didn't realize was unlocked. She nodded, it was a small nod, but Eala felt it in her chest. She had pushed the world number 2 to the absolute limit, and she had lost, but losing to Rybakina like that felt different from all the other losses. It felt like a receipt, a proof of purchase for something she hadn't yet received. That brings us to May 11th, 2026. The semi-finals, the Central Stadium, 10,000 people, and Aryna Sabalenka. Let me describe Sabalenka for you because she matters to this story more than any antagonist ever could. She is the world number 1. She's a defending champion in Rome. She had already won Madrid that season. She had already won the Sunshine Double. She hits the ball so hard that spectators flinch when she makes contact, as if the sound itself is a projectile. But here's the thing about Sabalenka that the highlight reels don't capture. She used to be fragile. There was a time when her serve would disappear in big moments, when her emotions would turn her into a wrecking ball aimed at her own foundation. She fixed that, or rather she didn't fix it, she befriended it. She learned to roar instead of crumble. She learned that power is not just about how hard you hit, but about how quickly you can forgive yourself for missing. By 2026 she had become something terrifying, a champion who had made peace with her demons. Across the net stood Alex Eala, who was still learning how to make peace with hers. The match began the way everyone expected it to end, quickly, brutally, but not in Sabalenka's favor. The first set was a surrealist painting. Eala broke Sabalenka's serve twice, against the best server in women's tennis. The world number 1's first serve percentage dropped to 55%, which for her is like a concert pianist forgetting where middle C is. Unforced errors began to leak out of Sabalenka's racket like water from a cracked vase. And Eala was painting lines. Her forehand found corners that didn't seem to exist. Her backhand stayed low and heavy, the kind of shot that makes tall players bend their knees in ways they hate. The Philippine flags in the crowd were no longer waving, they were conducting a symphony of disbelief. At 5-2, Eala had 2 set points. Sabalenka saved them both because that's what champions do. She broke back, she made it 5-4. She roared toward the crowd, and for one terrible moment it felt like the natural order was reasserting itself. The world number 1 was supposed to wake up eventually. That was the deal, that was always the deal. But Eala didn't fold. She held her breath and held her serve and took the first set 6-4, and the Foro Italico became a living thing, not just loud, alive. The second set was supposed to be the correction. The moment where Sabalenka reminded everyone why she wears the crown. She broke Eala immediately. 1-0. She roared again, and this time the roar was different. It was the sound of someone saying enough. Then Eala broke back, and the match became something else entirely. It became a fistfight in an elevator. Every rally lasted forever. Every point carried the weight of a small universe. The crowd stopped doing synchronized chants and started just making noise asterisk, any noise, any sound. Anything to release the pressure that was building behind their ribcages. At 5-4, Eala stepped to the baseline to serve for the match. This is the moment where most young players dissolve. The legs get heavy, the arm gets tight, the mind starts calculating everything except the next point. But Eala's face was not the face of someone calculating. It was the face of someone who had already lived this moment 1,000 times in empty practice courts, in hotel rooms, in the early mornings before the sun had decided to show up. First serve corner, return long, 15-love. Second serve, ace down the tee, Sabalenka didn't even move, 30-love. The stadium exploded. Then Sabalenka, because she is who she is, clawed back 2 points, 30-30, 1 point from deuce, 1 point from the possibility of extending the match into the kind of chaos where anything could happen. Eala bounced the ball once, twice, 3 times. She looked up at the stands, not at the flags, not at the cameras, but at her mother, Rizet. Rizet was already crying. Nearby, dignitaries and special guests leaned forward in their seats, their professional composure cracking like dry earth. Eala served down the center line. Sabalenka got her racket on it barely. The ball died in the net. Match point. The stadium froze, not metaphorically, physically. 10,000 people stopped breathing at the same time. Sabalenka walked back to the baseline slowly, deliberately, her face impossible to read. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shaken. She looked like a chess player who had just realized she was in a losing position but was still looking for the one move that might save her. Eala tossed the ball into the Roman sky. She served wide. Sabalenka was pulled off balance, her return floating weakly into the center of the court. And in that instant, Eala stepped forward and crushed a forehand into the open space. Not a smart shot, not a safe shot, certain shot. The kind of shot you hit when you have already decided that you belong here. Sabalenka didn't chase it, she knew. Game set match, Alex Eala. The stadium erupted. Eala dropped her racket, covered her face with both hands, and cried, not the polite tears of someone who has just achieved a career milestone. These were the ugly, heaving, months-in-the-making sobs of someone who had been carrying a backpack full of bricks and had finally been allowed to put it down. The early exits, the ranking drops, the whispers, the critics who said she moved poorly on clay. The moments at 3 a.m. when she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by believing in herself. All of it poured out onto the clay of Rome. Sabalenka walked to the net slowly. Her expression was not defeat, it was something closer to relief. She had played badly by her standards, yes, but she had also witnessed something, and there is a kind of champion who recognizes when they have been part of someone else's arrival. You played incredible, she said, you deserve this. Eala, still choking on tears, managed to whisper, thank you. They embraced, not the quick, perfunctory hug of 2 athletes fulfilling an obligation. It was sincere. It lasted long enough for the crowd to notice. And then Sabalenka pulled back and added something that she didn't have to say, go win the final, you're ready. That would have been enough. That would have been a beautiful ending to a semi-final that nobody expected. A handshake, a kind word, a moment of grace between competitors. But Alex Eala was not done. As Sabalenka began to walk away, Eala called out to her, Aryna, wait. Sabalenka stopped. She turned around. The stadium, which had been roaring, began to quiet. Cameras zoomed in. Thousands of spectators leaned forward, not sure what they were about to see but certain it was not part of the usual script. Eala walked to her bag. She unzipped a compartment, and she pulled out the commemorative semi-finalists plaque. The one she had just received for advancing to the final. It was small enough to hold in two hands, but it glinted under the Roman sun like something that mattered. She stepped closer to Sabalenka. "I want you to have this." Sabalenka's face went through three emotions in 2 seconds: confusion, disbelief, and then something softer. "What? No, you earned it, you won." Eala shook her head. She was still crying, but she was smiling now, a real smile, the kind that comes from a place deeper than happiness. "This match meant more to me than a trophy," she said. "It meant proving to myself that I belong here, and I couldn't have done that without facing someone like you." Her voice didn't waver. "You've been the standard for so long, the player everybody wants to be, the player who pushes the entire sport forward. Champions inspire the next generation even when they lose. And I want you to have this as a reminder of that." The stadium had gone completely silent. 10,000 people, not a single one of them breathing loudly. You could have heard a tennis ball bounce from the other side of Rome. Sabalenka stood frozen. The world number one, the most dominant force in women's tennis, the woman who had built her career on intimidation and power, suddenly looked like she was fighting back tears. She reached out and took the plaque. Her hand was steady, but her eyes were not. "You're something special," she said quietly, and then she pulled Eala into another embrace. This one was longer. It was the kind of hug you give someone when you have just realized that you will remember them for the rest of your life. The crowd erupted again, but this time the applause was different. It wasn't for the upset. It wasn't for the victory. It was for the gesture, for the humility, for the fact that a 20-year-old had just taught 10,000 people something about what it means to win. Within minutes, clips of the exchange exploded across social media. Tens of millions of views within hours. Comment sections filled with people who didn't even follow tennis, people who had stumbled onto the video by accident and found themselves wiping their eyes. "I've never seen anything like this," one person wrote. She gave away her own plaque to the woman she just beat. Another comment from someone who claimed to have been in the stadium that day said, "I was there, nobody left right away. We all just stood there and clapped. Some people were crying, I don't know why, I just know it felt important." In the Philippines, media outlets ran headlines that didn't mention the score. "Eala's heart shines brighter than the Roman sun," one read. "A champion in spirit," read another. Even Belarusian media, which might have been expected to focus on Sabalenka's disappointment, instead ran stories about the mutual respect between the two women. Later that evening, Sabalenka posted a photo on Instagram. It showed her holding the plaque. Her eyes were still visibly red. The kind of red that doesn't come from crying for 5 minutes but from crying on and off for hours. Her caption was brief but devastating. "I came to Rome to win the title. I leave with something I never expected. A friend. Thank you, Alex. You are a champion in every sense of the word. Now go win the final." Eala replied within minutes, "Thank you for being the standard, for making all of us better. I'll do my best." The exchange collected millions of likes. Fans who had never cared about either player suddenly found themselves emotionally invested in a bond that had formed between two women who, 48 hours earlier, had been trying to hit each other off the court. But the tournament was not over. 2 days later, the final arrived, and waiting on the other side of the net was Coco Gauff, the world number 3, a former Grand Slam champion, a woman who had grown up in the spotlight and had never once seemed afraid of it. She was 22 years old, which in normal life is very young, but in tennis years meant she had already seen everything. The analysts gave Gauff a slight edge. Experience, they said, big match pedigree, a history of success at the Italian Open. Eala, they reminded everyone, was stepping into her first WTA 1000 final. The pressure was supposed to be enormous. The occasion was supposed to be too big. The clay was supposed to be her enemy. But the woman who walked onto the court that afternoon was not the same Alex Eala who had arrived in Rome 10 days earlier. She walked differently. Her shoulders were back. Her eyes were forward. She looked like someone who had already defeated the world number 1 and had decided that the only thing left to do was to do it again. The opening set was a chess match played at sprinting speed. Both players held serve through the first 6 games. Every rally was a negotiation. Every point was a small war. The crowd, still buzzing from the semi-final drama, seemed to understand that they were watching something that would be talked about for years. Then at 4-4 the breakthrough arrived. Eala earned her first break point of the match. She didn't hesitate. She unleashed a forehand winner that froze Gauff in place. The stadium erupted. One commentator who had been covering tennis for 2 decades was heard saying, "I've watched Alex for years and I've never seen her play with this kind of confidence. This is not the same player from earlier in the season. This is somebody completely different." Eala served out the set 6-4, her hands did not tremble, her breath did not quicken, she walked to her chair like someone who had been there 100 times before. The second set continued in the same vein. Eala broke early. She surged to a 4-1 lead. Goff fought back, she always fights back, but the injuries that had troubled her throughout the clay season were clearly taking their toll. She couldn't find an answer to Eala's relentless depth, to the fearless shot-making, to the composure of a woman who had already stared down the world number one and refused to blink. When the final point came, the scoreboard read 6-4, 6-3. Alex Eala collapsed to her knees on the clay, buried her face in her hands, and cried again, but these were not the tears of relief from the semifinal. These were the tears of arrival, of completion, of a young woman who had just done something that no one from her country had ever done before. Her mother, Rizette, rushed down from the stands and wrapped her arms around her. Her coaches, Joan Bosch, Luc Bouza, Sandro Vienna, followed close behind, their faces a mixture of joy and disbelief. Philippine flags waved wildly throughout every section of the stadium. Chants of Eala, Eala, thundered across the marble walls of the Foro Italico. And then came a moment that the broadcast cameras almost missed. In the stands, Aryna Sabalenka rose to her feet. She had not left Rome after her semifinal defeat. She had stayed. She had watched the final from a seat among the spectators, not from a luxury box or a private suite, but from a regular seat surrounded by regular fans. And now she was standing, applauding, her hands coming together with genuine force. When Eala looked up and saw her, she did something that was not captured by the official broadcast but was seen by everyone in the stands. She lifted the trophy toward Sabalenka, not in triumph, not in defiance, in acknowledgement, one champion saluting another. The fans in the stands saw it. Within hours, phone videos had been uploaded and shared and reshared, millions of views, millions of comments. "This is what sports should be about," one person wrote. "Two women who respect each other so much that winning and losing almost don't matter." Sabalenka's visible emotion only reinforced how powerful that moment had become. She was not just clapping politely. She was cheering, she was celebrating. She was, in that moment, the opposite of a sore loser. She was a gracious witness. The Italian Open ended with Eala standing at center court, the trophy raised high above her head. The Roman evening air was warm and golden. The flags kept waving, the chants kept echoing, and somewhere in the stands, a woman who had every reason to be bitter was smiling and clapping and meaning every second of it. Years from now, when Alex Eala looks back on her career, she will remember the ranking points. She will remember moving up to world number 22. She will remember the trophy in the final and the forehand winner that sealed it. But I suspect she will also remember something else. She will remember the weight of a small plaque in her hands and the decision to give it away. She will remember the look on Sabalenka's face when she accepted it. She will remember that victory, real victory, is not just about what you take, it is about what you leave behind. And what she left behind in Rome was not just an upset, not just a title, it was a new definition of what it means to be a champion, one that does not require you to destroy your opponent, one that allows you to lift them up even as you lift the trophy over your own head. That is the story of the Italian Open in 2026. That is the story of Alex Eala, the 20-year-old from Manila who went to Rome to play tennis and ended up teaching the world something about grace. The flags have been folded, the clay has been swept. The trophy is in a display case somewhere, probably next to a photograph of that embrace. But the plaque that Eala gave away, it is in Sabalenka's home. And on certain nights when the world number one walks past it, she stops, she looks at it, and she remembers the day she lost a match and gained something she never expected. A friend, a standard, a reminder that even champions need to be reminded of why they started playing this beautiful, brutal game in the first place.